They say your enemies will stab you in the chest. But no one ever warns you that your own family will smile while they twist the knife in your back. You grow up thinking love is automatic, that family means safety, that your oldest friends will never betray you. But Schopenhauer saw through the illusion that he said, almost all our sorrows spring out of our relations with other people. He wasn't being cynical. He was telling you the truth that polite society hides. Because the truth is dangerous. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange tension when your so-called loved ones shrink when you succeed. The awkward silence when you talk about your vision. The backhanded compliments. The subtle sabotage. The way they seem supportive until you start becoming more than them. It starts as a whisper in your mind. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But you're not. You're awakening. The very people who were supposed to love you are quietly rooting for your failure. And if you don't learn to see it, if you don't develop the psychological armor, you'll keep handing your soul to people who only show up to drain it. So let's begin. Because this is the lesson no one taught you. Loyalty is a myth until power reveals the truth. You see, most people only support you when you're beneath them. When you're small, struggling, dependent, they'll feed you breadcrumbs of love and praise. But the moment you outgrow the image they have of you, the moment you step into your power, they'll turn. Not all at once. No, that would be too obvious. They'll do it slowly, subtly, like water wearing down a stone. Your brother might laugh at your ideas. Your childhood friend might ghost you when you land a big win. Your mother might guilt trip you with lines like, "Don't forget where you came from." And your father, he might never say he's proud. Because your strength reminds him of what he never became. It's brutal. But it's not personal. It's psychological gravity. What Schopenhauer called the will to life. People crave superiority. And when your glow threatens their shadow, they'll try to dim you. Not because they hate you, but because your light reveals their darkness. And here's the kicker. They won't even know they're doing it. Most people are so psychologically unaware, they believe their envy is concern. They'll say, "I'm just trying to protect you." But what they're really doing is projecting their own fear onto your courage. And that's why you've got to stop seeking validation from those who never evolved. You think you're being kind by including them. By dragging them up the mountain with you. But here's the harsh truth. Not everyone is meant to come with you. Some people are anchors, not wings. You ever notice how your energy shifts when you walk into certain rooms? How your confidence evaporates when that one friend starts joking about your goals? That's not in your head. That's energetic warfare. You're being pulled back into the identity they need you to have, because your evolution threatens their comfort. Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is the basis of morality." But what he meant wasn't to suffer fools. He meant, see clearly, act wisely, and never let guilt override truth. Let me tell you a story. There was a boy, brilliant, quiet, obsessed with building. He'd spend hours alone, tinkering, dreaming, imagining worlds beyond his small town. His family, they mocked it. His friends called him weird, too intense. He tried to explain his vision once. His mother told him, "Just get a normal job." His brother laughed and said, "Who do you think you are?" But he kept building. And the day his work changed lives, guess who posted pictures with him online? Guess who smiled wide and said, "We always knew he'd make it"? You already know. The truth? They didn't want him to succeed. They just didn't want to be left behind. That's what you're up against. Not hatred, not cruelty, but fearful mediocrity disguised as love. You have to understand something deep. Most people don't want the real you. They want the version of you that makes them feel comfortable, small enough to manage, quiet enough to control, broken enough to need them. And the moment you become whole, they panic. Why? Because you are no longer theirs. You're no longer the obedient child, the struggling friend, the dependent sibling. You're becoming sovereign, and sovereignty terrifies those who've never claimed their OW, and so what do? They weaponize your love against you. They remind you of old times. They say you've changed. Yes, you have. That's the point. But they'll use every emotional lever they can to reel you back. And if you don't build inner clarity, if you don't learn to separate connection from conditioning, you will live a life of invisible chains, smiling while your soul starves. You've got to ask yourself, are you building your future, or are you preserving their comfort? Because you can't do both. This is the price of evolution, the shedding, the silence, the betrayal of your old self to honor your higher self. It hurts. Let it. Because pain is not your enemy. It's the alarm clock of your awakening, and the sooner you stop expecting emotional safety from the wrong people, the sooner you become unbreakable. They will call you arrogant. They will say you're selfish. They will try to make you small again. Smile, because that's how you know you're becoming someone they can no longer manipulate. And there is no greater revenge than becoming untouchable. Keep going. You were taught to be polite. To keep the peace, to sacrifice your voice for the illusion of harmony. But peace built on suppression is a prison. And Schopenhauer knew it. He saw society for what it really is, a web of fragile egos and unspoken resentments. Not a family, not a tribe, but a battlefield. And in that battlefield, you've been trained to disarm yourself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. To downplay your ambition. To water down your ideas. To pretend you're not the threat you are. Why? Because when you shine too brightly, they squint, they flinch, they call you too much. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. They feel your potential before you even realize it. That's why they treat you differently. That's why you've always felt slightly alien, even among the people closest to you. You were born with a frequency they can't decode. Not because they're evil, but because your vision reminds them they never had one. It's subtle, but it starts early. They roll their eyes when you talk about a new idea. They laugh off your intensity as dramatic. They change the subject when your passion sets the air on fire. And eventually, you learn to quiet your genius. To edit your energy. To camouflage in a world that fears depth. But it eats you alive, because no matter how hard you try to belong, a part of you knows. You weren't meant to fit in, you were meant to stand alone. That's what Schopenhauer meant when he said, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But when you start hitting that invisible target, when your vision starts becoming reality, the people who never dared to dream will try to tear yours apart. Let me show you how it works. When you're poor, everyone's a philosopher. They say, money isn't everything. But the moment you break through, the same people suddenly ask, how much are you making? When you're alone and broken, they offer advice. But when you're healed and rising, they disappear, or worse, they try to bring back the version of you they could control. And this is what no one warned you about. The most dangerous manipulations don't come from enemies. They come from the people who claim they love you the most, because they don't need to control your body. They only need to control your guilt, and guilt is the golden chain they use to keep you docile. They'll say, you've changed. You think you're better than us now? Don't forget who was there when you had nothing. But look closer. Were they really there for you? Or were they just there to feel better about themselves? Some people only support you as long as you're beneath them. The moment you start rising, emotionally, financially, intellectually, they panic. Because your transformation forces them to confront a terrifying truth. They never left the shore, they never dared to swim, they never faced the storm. But you did, you chose to evolve. And evolution always comes with excommunication. You will lose people. But you'll gain yourself. And that's a trade only the brave can make. Let me tell you something you've never been told. Not all connection is love. Some of it is survival. Some of it is ownership. Some of it is silent warfare. You ever feel drained after a conversation with a certain friend or family member? You walk away feeling smaller, doubting yourself, second-guessing your path? That's not coincidence, that's energetic theft. They don't need to insult you to harm you. All they need is doubt. Planted subtly, Watered daily, a sigh, a pause, a raised eyebrow. Tiny gestures that scream, "You're not who you think you are, but you are. You're dangerous, because you've stopped asking for permission, and once you stop needing their validation, they lose their grip on your identity. That's when the real battle begins. They might mock your intensity. They might gossip behind your back. They might try to isolate you socially, but remember this. When a tree grows tall, it no longer needs the shade of the smaller ones. Let them talk. Let them walk. Let them doubt. Because you're not here to be understood. You're here to be unshakable. And unshakable people make shallow ones tremble. There's a reason most people avoid solitude. Because when you strip away the noise of others, you hear the truth of who you are. And for the first time, you stop mistaking proximity for loyalty. You stop confusing history with destiny. Just because someone was in your life for 10 years doesn't mean they deserve 10 more. This is the moment Schopenhauer was talking about. The moment you realize that peace doesn't mean silence. It means alignment. It means surrounding yourself with people who don't flinch when you shine, who don't feel threatened when you grow, who look at your strength and say, yes, more. But to find them, you must first lose the ones who never believed in you. That's the pain most never push through, so they stay. They shrink. They smile in photos with people who suffocate their soul. But not you. You've already tasted the truth. And once you taste it, you can't go back. You realize that becoming powerful isn't about defeating others. It's about reclaiming yourself from the people who tried to define you. This is your awakening. Not the spiritual fantasy kind. The brutal, bloody, rebirth kind. The one where you cut ties, cry alone, sit in silence, and rise with clarity. Because you're not the scared child they once knew. You're not the lost soul they could control. You're becoming something else. And that something can't be owned. They won't see it. Not at first. They'll still speak to you the same way, still expect the same reactions. But something in you has shifted. The storm they once summoned in you now returns silence. The button they used to push no longer exists, and that's when they feel it. That unsettling feeling that you've outgrown them, that they can no longer reach you. That's power. Real power doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it simply stops responding. And the moment you stop feeding their drama, their manipulation, their emotional blackmail, they panic. They call you cold, selfish, arrogant. But you know better now. You've learned that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the absence of people who manufacture it, and Schopenhauer was right. The more intelligent and evolved you become, the more solitude becomes your default. Not because you hate people, but because most of them haven't faced their shadow, and when you have, their avoidance becomes intolerable. They don't want to do the work. They want shortcuts. They want comfort. They want you to shrink so they don't have to grow. But you've chosen a different path. The path of truth. The path of self-mastery. The path that costs everything, but gives you back your soul. It's not for the faint-hearted. Because when you start seeing clearly, you lose the luxury of pretending. You see that some friends were only close because you were broken. That some family only loved the version of you that needed them. That some relationships only existed because you were too afraid to walk away. But you're afraid no more. You've walked through the fire, and though it burned, it revealed. It revealed the lies, the masks, the quiet betrayals, but more than that, it revealed you in your purest form, unafraid, unapologetic, unbreakable. You see, every betrayal was a gift, every wound, a map, and every lonely night, a conversation with the future version of you saying, keep going, I promise it's worth it. And now you're here, not fully healed, not yet, but clear, focused, dangerously aware. Aware that not everyone deserves access to your mind, that not every phone call needs to be answered, that not every I miss you deserves forgiveness. Forgiveness is sacred. It's not a default setting. It's not a weakness. It's a weapon. when used consciously, because letting go of pain doesn't mean you let the person back and you've got scars now. But they're not signs of weakness. They're armor, proof that you've been there and came back sharper. This is the transformation. When you stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. When you stop justifying your boundaries to those who never respected them. When you stop explaining your evolution to those still living in denial. Because here's the most painful truth. They loved you most when you were insecure. Because that version of you was easier to manipulate. But now you speak with certainty. You move with purpose. You walk into rooms like you belong there because you do. And that energy, it threatens everything they've built their self-worth on. Because your growth forces them to confront their stagnation. Your confidence highlights their fear. Your boundaries expose their disrespect, so of course they'll attack you. Of course they'll twist the narrative. Of course they'll say, you changed. Good. You were supposed to. Growth is betrayal to those addicted to your old self. But let them stay addicted. You've moved on. You're building something now. Not just wealth, not just success. Something deeper. You're building sovereignty. The kind of inner strength that doesn't need applause. That doesn't crumble under guilt. That doesn't seek permission to exist. And when you have that, they can't touch you anymore. Not with shame. Not with silence. Not with their carefully engineered guilt trips. Because you're no longer the prey. You are now the strategist. You know their tactics before they use them. You see their passive aggression as fear. You hear the fake compliments and translate them as insecurity. You read the room and decide if it even deserves your presence. That's elite energy. That's what happens when you stop trying to fix others and start mastering yourself. You reclaim your time, your voice, your psychological territory. And from that place, you no longer fear being alone. In fact, you crave it. Because now you know. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's strategy. It's the space where you recalibrate. Where you hear your own voice again. Where you sharpen your mind while the world dulls theirs with noise. Let them call it antisocial. You'll call it preparation. Because while they gossip, you're learning. While they doubt, you're building. While they scroll, you watch them from the mountaintop. And the view from the top is quiet, but it's divine. Because there's no one left to impress. No one left to please. No one left to fear. Just you. Unfiltered. Unshaken. Unchained. This is the point of no return. The point where you stop apologizing for who you've become. The point where you no longer explain your silence. The point where you walk away not to punish but to preserve. And what you're preserving is sacred, your vision, your energy, your future. Because you finally realized the real battle was never with them. It was with the part of you that needed their approval. And that part, it's dead now. There's a strange moment when the dust has settled, when the noise dies down, and you realize no one's coming, not to rescue you, not to clap for you, not to say, I was wrong about you, and yet you're still standing, not because they believed in you, but because you stopped needing them to. This is the final freedom, the psychological detachment from every role they tried to force on you, the obedient daughter, the always available son, the friend who never says no, the one who never complains, never leaves, never rises above the station they assigned you. But you rose anyway, quietly, dangerously, completely. You became what they feared, self-contained, unreachable, unbreakable. And in this stillness, you understand why Schopenhauer called solitude the fate of the superior mind. Because most will never do this work, that they'll continue the cycles, suffocate in family systems they never question, stay loyal to betrayal because that's just how it's always been. Call it tradition, call it culture, call it love. But love without respect is not love, and tradition without truth is just manipulation dressed in old clothes. You've seen it now. How the most dangerous cages are invisible, held together not by bars, but by guilt. By phrases like, you've changed. After all I did for you. We're family. Blood is thicker. No truth is thicker. Respect is thicker. Peace is thicker. Because what good is blood if it poisons you? You're not here to play roles anymore. You're not here to keep the family comfortable while they slowly kill your spirit. You're here for something greater, something sacred, your own evolution. And evolution is violent. It requires a death. Not a physical one, but the death of who you were, so something stronger can emerge. And this new version of you doesn't beg. Doesn't chase. Doesn't explain. You observe. You move. You reign. You understand now that family isn't always who you were born into. It's who mirrors your values, who respects your boundaries, who feeds your spirit without leashing your wings. The truth is, some of your family was only ever biologically related. Spiritually, they were strangers. Some of your friends were emotional debt collectors, investing time just to manipulate you later. You've paid your dues, and now you're done. You don't hate them. Hate is still a tether. You feel nothing. Not because you're cold, but because you've healed. And when healing is real, it's quiet. There's no announcement. Just distance. Just dignity. You no longer yell your worth. You embody it. You no longer ask to be seen. You walk in a way that cannot be ignored. And here's the irony they'll never understand. They had full access to you, all of you, and they wasted it. Now the door is closed, not slammed, not locked in bitterness, just gently sealed, because the version of you they disrespected will never return. And the version that took its place, they'll never have access to. That's what happens when you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, what part of me allowed it? You shifted from victim to alchemist. You took betrayal and turned it into strategy. You took loneliness and forged it into leadership. You took silence and turned it into sacred focus. And now you no longer fear losing people. You fear losing yourself again. That fear, it keeps you sharp. It keeps you sovereign. It keeps you dangerous in a world that wants you dependent. Let them misunderstand. Let them gossip. Let them build entire narratives around the version of you they think they know. That's no longer your concern. Your concern is your mission, your discipline, your psychological empire. Because while they stayed busy being liked, you chose to become undeniable. While they played social chess, you studied inner warfare. And now, you win not because you're ruthless, but because you're free. You're not entangled in their emotions. You're not imprisoned by their approval. You don't need validation from a crowd you've outgrown. That's the kind of freedom most people never taste. Because it demands sacrifice. It demands solitude. It demands a level of radical self-respect that borders on dangerous. And you were willing to pay the price, so don't apologize for the distance. Don't justify the silence. Don't explain your glow. They know exactly why you left. They just hoped you'd forget. But you didn't, and you won't. Because now you walk with memory in your bones, fire in your blood, and silence as your armor. You've outgrown the cage. And now that you've flown, you'll never clip your wings for anyone. Again, so to those watching, still stuck, still unsure, still swallowing their truth for the sake of peace. Know this, you don't owe them your silence, you don't owe them your time. You owe yourself your freedom. And freedom begins the moment you stop pretending they didn't break you. You admit it, you face it, and then you rebuild stronger, smarter, untouchable, because you were the storm all along, you just forgot. But now you remember. And they will too. If this video hit you deep, it means you. We're ready to hear it. Don't keep this awakening to yourself. Fire, leave a comment. Fire, like the video. Fire, share it with someone still trapped in the fog. And above all, subscribe to this channel if you're building inner power and psychological dominance. You're not alone. You're just ahead. And where we're going, only the rarest souls can follow. Until next time, stay sharp, stay sovereign, stay dangerous.